The day.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to an episode of The Hand of the Day, brought to you by 888 Poker. I'm filming this one on the Waikoloa Beach on the Big Island of Hawaii, and this hand comes from Sarosi, who's playing a poker tournament. The blinds are 2,000, 4,000 with a 500 ante, and under the gun opens to 10,000 for a min raise. We, as the hero, find ourselves on the button with 10-9 offsuit and opt to call, which I think is a little bit too loose. I think this hand is just a little bit too bad to play here. You're kind of short, awkward sort of stacks here. I guess you're like 50 big blinds deep, so it's a little deep for a tournament, but it's just sort of an awkward hand to play on the button. I don't think there's quite enough value in this hand to call, especially facing it under the gun open. Maybe if he opened in the cutoff or the hijack, you could maybe argue for a call here, or maybe a 3-bet, but I just think your hand doesn't have enough value to 3-bet either because it doesn't win at showdown often enough, and it's a little loose to do versus an under the gun open. Now, I don't know anything about this player. Maybe he's really bad. Maybe he plays very poorly post-flop. Maybe the big blind is very bad as well, so you could confidently play this hand, and it could be justifiable, but I still think overall, without any information, it's a little bit too loose. Anyway, you call, okay, fine, and the big blind calls as well. We go 3 ways to the flop. Flop comes king 10-6 with 2 hearts. Big blind checks, under the gun checks, and that's a little bit weird that he checks after raising pre-flop. I guess he could check here with a balanced range. Maybe he has something as strong as a weak king. But generally here, it's a flop that you expect him to bet because it hits his range more than the other players. And even if he has something like ace, queen, ace, jack, whatever, you expect him to bet this flop quite a bit. So I don't know exactly what to make of a check here, depending on what you know about your opponent. It could mean nothing, or it could be something that he's trying to trap you with as well. So it's important to take note of how your opponents play and understand their tendencies a little bit to know what to make of a sort of awkward check from the under the gun raiser. Now it's on you, and you check here on the button as well, which I'm totally fine with. You don't want to get check raised by the big blind. You definitely can't get 3 streets of value for your hand. You're going to have to check 1 street. I'm okay with checking the flop, make your hand look weak, and potentially win a bet from the big blind who comes out bluffing on the turn. So I'm okay with checking the flop here. Well done. Checked around, and let's see what happens on the turn. The turn comes a 7, which gives you a gut shot straight draw. Pretty good turn for you. And the big blind bets out 25,000. Under the gun now folds, and it's on you. Here we have a very clear call. It's very possible we have the best hand. The big blind could be betting maybe even a worse 10, maybe even a 7, maybe he has something like 7-8. He could be betting worse hands for value, and he could be bluffing a decent amount of the time. With the under the gun raiser who checked and you check in position, it's very possible that the big blind senses a lot of weakness in the pot and tries to apply a lot of pressure. He also is defending in the big blind. He's calling 5K pre-flop to win 30K or something like that. So he has a lot of incentive to defend with a very wide range of hands, meaning that he's going to have more hands that are bluffs in this spot than your average opponent. So I wouldn't be too worried about a bet here in this spot. I would happily call this bet, sort of see what develops on the river. You decide to call, and let's see what is up on the river. The river comes a 7 of hearts, which completes a flush, and of course, it's a scary card in this situation. Now at this point, your opponent bets 120,000, which is a very weird bet. Very polarizing here. He bets 1.5 times the size of the pot, and at this point, of course, you only beat a bluff. So now you got to think about what types of hands your opponent's going to be betting, number 1, what price you're getting, number 2, and how your hand matches up against the range of your opponents. So let's break it down a little bit without getting too complicated. The first thing is when your opponent bets 120,000 into a pot of 85 or so, he's definitely saying that he doesn't have a king. So you could eliminate a king from his range because he would never bet 1.5 times the pot with a king when the flush card gets there and the board pairs, because he can't really hope to get called by worse. So when your opponent bets this big, he's basically saying, I have a flush, I have a boat, maybe I have a straight, and probably not even trips. I think if your opponent has something like 3 sevens, he's probably going to bet something like 50, 60,000 to try and get value from a king or a hero call from a 10. Unless he's thinking on a really high level and trying to make his hand look super weak by betting super big and getting you to make a superhero call, you can't really expect that he has anything other than a boat or a flush, maybe a straight in this spot. It's just too hard for you to make a hero call for most of your stack and him to expect you to do that. So it wouldn't make sense for him to bet big with anything other than those 2 hands. So now that we've sort of eliminated his hand range and got it very narrow between flushes, boats, and bluffs, we just got to figure out what percentage of the time he actually has these strong hands versus the time he has these weak hands. So now you can see on this screen, I ran a little equity calculation for you. It's something I do behind the scenes that I wanted to share with you today. Don't get too overwhelmed by the numbers and the formatting of all this screen and stuff. Just simply look at the equity on the upper left side. I plugged in your hand there, which is 10-9, against all the possible hands that your opponent could have. Now, it's very hard to do this with 100% accuracy simply because you don't know a few things. You don't know the percentage of the time that your opponent's going to be bluffing this river, and you don't know exactly what his calling range is pre-flop. So you don't know exactly what hands he's going to have on this river, but you do your best job to estimate. And you just got to figure out, well, what price am I getting, and do I have the right odds to call? So in this calculation here, I did a very simple one without having any information about your opponent one way or another, just a basic estimation of what I could expect my equity to be in this spot. What percentage of the time do I expect to win the pot if I call? As you can see on this graph, it's about 65% of the time if your opponent is always bluffing here with all of his bluffs. Now again, that's an ambitious estimate because he might not always be bluffing, but that's something sort of to keep in mind as the guideline. Even if your equity is 50%, it's a good frame. Even if you go less than this equity of 68% or whatever, and you say it's 50%, you want to be conservative, it gives you a good benchmark of how often you could expect to win the pot. Now you just got to figure out, well, what odds am I getting? Well, if you look at the pot size and look at the bet size, you figure out that, hey, I need to be right about 35, 40%, 50, 40% of the time to justify calling here. Now, you can see the equity you're getting is 50%. You only have to be right 40%. Even if you're being conservative, you're going to profit by making this call. Now, in a tournament, depending on the stages of the tournament and ICM considerations, you have other things to consider when simply making a call, because you're not only calling for your EV of chips, you're calling based on how those chips influence the value of your stack, because tournament poker doesn't equate to cash game poker. In a cash game, you would have a very clear call here because every chip is worth $1. In a tournament, it's a little bit different because if you win all the chips in the tournament, you don't win 100% of the money. You win something like 20%. So that tells us that your chips aren't worth exactly the same as 1-to-1. They're worth a lot less than that. So that means you have to be more conservative when making these huge calls. In other words, you're going to need to have a lot more equity than the odds you're getting to compensate for the fact that you need to be more conservative when putting your chips at risk. All in all, in conclusion, I would say you probably have the right price to call here if your opponent is bluffing all the time. So if you know your opponent to be a very aggressive, very loose player, taking advantage of the fact that your range looks pretty damn weak here, let's be honest, you can't really have a flush because you would have bet the flop. You probably don't have a boat because you would have bet the flop with any 2-pair or trips, or you would have raised the turn. So the best hand you could have is something like a king, or maybe trip sevens. If he's betting this big to try and get you to fold those hands, when you add up the psychology factors with the odds that you're getting, I would say it's a good spot to make a hero call in this spot. You decide to call, your opponent turns over 5-4 offsuit for a bluff, which confirms the fact that your opponent's going to be bluffing here pretty much all the time. If he's calling pre-flop with really weak hands like 5-4 offsuit, and he's betting the turn and betting the river with them, he's going to be bluffing here enough of the time that you can justify calling. So it's good to look at your opponent's hands when they go to showdown, not only when you're in the pot, but also when you're not in the pot, to use this information for future decisions that you're going to face against the same opponents later on. So well done, man. You won the pot. Congrats. Made a big hero call. It paid off for you, and I hope you did well in the rest of the tournament. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. It helps me grow the channel and make more awesome content for you guys and bring you more cool videos on vacation from places like this in Hawaii. So I hope you enjoyed this. Share it with someone you think would like it. I'd greatly appreciate that. It means a lot to me, and I'll see you guys next time on The Hand of the Day. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Or as we say here, aloha.